Prime Minister Johnson, President Fontana, Mayor Sala, let me say, very welcome to all the delegates from all over the world, excellencies and young delegates. I would like to thank all the young people who've worked so hard over the past few months, and especially over the past 3 days. You represent the largest generation of youth in history. Around 3 billion people below the age 25, and very importantly, the large majority of which is from low and middle income countries. This generation, your generation, has the most to lose from climate change. And you know extremely well the dramatic consequences of global inequalities on poverty, malnutrition, access to health. You're right to demand accountability and change. Under current trends, we are falling short of our promise to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. And the pandemic and climate change have contributed to push nearly 100 million people into extreme poverty, bringing the total to 730 million people who are in extreme poverty. The climate, health, and food crises are deeply intertwined. We must act faster, much faster, and more effectively to tackle all of them. The ecological transition is not a choice, it's a necessity. We only have 2 options ahead of us. Either we face the costs of the transition now, or we act later and pay the much higher price of a climate disaster. The recovery from the pandemic is an opportunity to push our climate ambitions forward and do it fairly. And the state must be ready to help families and companies beat the short-term costs of the transition. Italy is pulling out all the stops to ensure countries move in the right direction and do it fast. In Europe, we contributed to set up the Next Generation EU program to ensure an equitable and sustainable recovery. It sets the green transition as one of its 3 pillars, together with digitalization and social inclusion. Italy has earmarked 40% of the fund in our recovery plan to the ecological transition. We aim to increase the share of renewable sources in our energy mix, make mobility more sustainable, improve the energy efficiency of our buildings, and safeguard biodiversity. As G20 presidency and co-chair of COP26 with the United Kingdom, we are pushing countries to honor their climate pledges and in some cases stand ready to make bolder ones. If we want to be successful, all countries have to do their part, starting from the G20 ones. The G20 includes countries that make up more than 80% of the world GDP and over 75% of the global emissions. All major players and emitters are there. In June, G20 ministers of education committed to promoting education for sustainable development in school curricula. In July, the Energy and Climate Ministries in Napoli committed to allocating large shares of their recovery plans to a green transition. But we are aware that we have to do more, a lot more. This is the aim of the Rome Summit that will take place at the end of October. We want to achieve a G20 commitment about the need to keep 1.5 degrees within reach. And we must develop long-term strategies that are consistent with 1.5 degrees. At the same time, we need to fulfill the $100 billion pledge to support developing countries. Low and middle-income economies are often more vulnerable to the effect of climate change, and emissions in each area of the world inevitably affects the rest of the globe. So it is both a moral imperative to support their transition and a pressing need. We grown-ups have learned what we have to do: mitigate, adapt, and raise funds to help poorer countries to do the same. But more than anything else, we now have to do it. We now have to act. I firmly believe that we have a lot to learn from your ideas, suggestions, and leadership. And your pressure, frankly. Your pressure is very welcome. We need to be whipped into action. Your mobilization has been powerful, and rest assured, we are listening. Thank you.